As the year of 1054 ended, William, Duke of Normandy, had proven he was not a man to be crossed, even by kings. In just a few short years, the illegitimate son of Duke Robert the Magnificent had gone from virtual fugitive from his own vassals, presiding over an anarchic and broken duchy, to arguably the supreme warlord of France. Thus far, William had survived his first dangerous years as Duke, triumphing with the help of King Henry I over a coalition of Norman rebels. And just 7 years later, the steely young Duke had bested his erstwhile ally and king as well. King Henry was compelled to accept a humiliating peace to ensure the return of French nobles languishing in Norman captivity, and was further required to pledge non-interference in any conflict between William and his rival Geoffrey, the expansionist Count of Anjou. But privately, the king in Paris was resolute to bring down the young Duke. Today's video is sponsored by Endel, an app that provides soundscapes for focus and relaxation. If you have a hard time concentrating for longer periods of time or switching off properly after a long day, then Endel could be a remedy. The app uses AI technology that is neuroscience patented, and it generates personalized soundscapes. So the app reacts to the time of day, the weather, and even your heart rate if you have a smartwatch to pair with the app. For me though, while I work, I often play calming soundtracks in the background to help block out the noise and distractions. So when Endel reached out to me, I quickly became a loyal user. The app helps me stay focused for longer periods while researching and writing content, and I'm sure it would be useful to all of you who have activities during the day such as studying, office work, and even regular chores. The first 100 people to download Endel using the link in the description below will get 7 days of free audio experiences. Endel totally works. Try it out for yourself. After the Battle of Mortimer, William had scores to settle with those who fought for his destruction. The chief figure of discord, William of Arc, had been contained and starved into submission in the formidable stronghold of Arc before being packed off into exile. William awarded the confiscated lands of his recent detractors to those more worthy of trust, in the process strengthening his hold over Upper Normandy. However, one leading opponent that couldn't so easily be removed was Morga, the brother of William of Arc, and William's own half-uncle. Morga too was a legitimate son of Duke Richard II, and likely a victim of association, rather than having a solid connection with his brother's rebellion. Yet as the Archbishop of Rouen, William could not easily dismiss him, and required a special church council held at Lisieux to have him exiled to Guernsey. As it turns out, William was wise to remove even those merely suspected of opposition. The years of 1055 to 1057 were ones of peace in the duchy, though William elected to take the fight to Geoffrey, who enjoyed a firm control over the border county of Maine. Just weeks following his peace agreement with Henry, William pressed into Maine. He began construction of a new castle at Ambrières, located around 13 miles south of Domfront, the site of an earlier victory over his rival. William clearly aimed to provoke Geoffrey into acting or else undermine his grip on the area. Geoffrey indeed responded, but only after William's departure from the area. Besieging the fortress, he promptly withdrew on receiving news of William's approach. But this further victory would have its cost. Though the following years of 1055 to 1057 were ones of rare quiet and peace both within and without William's domain, they would turn out to be the proverbial calm before the storm. Geoffrey was not about to take his defeat lying down, and found a kindred spirit in King Henry, who himself had not forgotten his own humbling at Mortimer and desire to crush the upstart Duke once and for all. The two convened in Tours in January of 1057, meeting again after this at Anjou on the March the 1st, to hammer out the details of a two-pronged invasion, this time focusing their wrath on the duchy west of the Seine. Unfortunately for the Allies, the campaign was characterized by a lack of internal opposition to William that had proved helpful in the previous conflicts, and the young Duke sensed danger. He likely had spies inform him of this build-up and moved to cleanse his lands of potential collaborators. In August of 1057, King Henry's army crossed the frontier into Normandy, aiming to split it in two by harrying the land up to Dives. William of Poitiers informs us that the royal army was not so large, but was still more numerous than the Duke's. This time, William initially allowed Henry's army to penetrate deep into his territory, with the probable aim being to strike Henry on his return journey, when his men were laden with loot. Unlike in 1054, though, William's masterful grasp on his enemy's movements appeared to have slackened, as the smaller royal force managed to move with greater secrecy than its larger counterpart 3 years before. On balance, the Duke also calculated that delayed action was impossible given the sheer devastation of the land. The king's army reached the sea, putting the Bessin region to the sword, and even sacking Caen itself. Though much of their movements were unheeded and unopposed, it's likely around this stage that scout reports of Henry's progress made William realize that a strike was essential to maintain ducal authority. Such punitive expeditions were as much exercises in undermining a lord's authority as they were booty runs, as a lord who couldn't protect, or at least avenge his people, was no real lord at all. William, however, was patient. He had mustered his force at Falaise and waited for the opportune moment to strike. On receiving news of Henry's likely crossing of the Dives, the Duke raced to the area to strike the king unawares. Henry had planned to get his entire force across the river at low tide. However, Wace informs us that the mass of men, horses, and baggage were in an unorganized and long column. Each man rushed to be the first across the bridge, which delayed the crossing significantly as the tide rose ominously. William, meanwhile, had moved from Falaise and gathered further troops as he went. Like other great men of his age, he was actually reluctant to commit to set-piece battles, given the huge risk of death or capture, and the very real prospect of losing all in a single day. Normally, his main concern would be to blunt the invaders' ability to forage, which, if successful, would sap their will to continue the fight. But the area near Varaville proved too tempting a chance for victory and valuable ransoms. The future conqueror perceived the odds were very much stacked in his favor. Upon contacting the French rear, a fierce melee broke out. According to Wace, William's knights striking with their swords and lances were supplemented by increasing numbers of infantry and some archers, though other sources suggest his was a small and mobile force, suggesting he mostly fell on Henry's divided host with knights. Whatever the exact composition of the attacking army, we do know what happened next. Wace writes that the great press was at the bridge, everyone being eager to reach it. But the bridge was old, the boards bent under the throng, the water rose, and the stream was strong. The weight was heavy, the bridge shook and at length fell, and all who were upon it perished. As word quickly spread through the French ranks that the bridge was gone, panic intensified to pandemonium. Many French breaking off to seek for other crossings, only to be isolated and cut down, having cast away their plunder and arms. Having already crossed, King Henry could do little but watch the slaughter from his vantage point the defeat was near total, with all those trapped on the western side of the river taken, drowned, or killed. To his credit, the king held on to hope of finding some passage across to aid his rear guard, even turning to his other great men for advice to this end. However, by this point, even the unaffected portion of Henry's army had no stomach for the fight, replying, "Sire, you shall not go. You shall return another time and destroy all the land, taking captive all their richest men." This refusal proved the final straw for the humiliated French king, and in rage and sadness he withdrew for the final time from Normandy, leaving his lord's prediction unfulfilled. William, meanwhile, was left the undisputed master of the field. Following Varaville, William only accepted peace if Henry gave up the disputed border fortress of Tillières. This was conceded, and a ceasefire of sorts was agreed, but not a formal peace, given that William, ambitious and ruthless as ever, further seized the fortress of Tirmert, which was squarely within French territory. This proved a step too far, even for the defeated and humiliated Henry, which meant that peace was not formalized until after the king's death in 1060. Not only did King Henry expire on the 4th of August, but his other great rival Geoffrey Martel also breathed his last on November 14th. Now the throne of France was occupied by Henry's 8-year-old son Philip, and the demise of Geoffrey destabilized the county of Anjou, which fell into civil war. 1060 had proved a fortuitous year, yet the county of Maine still loomed to William's south as an obvious danger to his territory's underbelly. As such, it had to be subdued. In preparation, William once more demonstrated a strong political intelligence by recalling some exiled Norman lords, as well as allying himself with the Count of Blois. Furthermore, according to William of Poitiers, William held another trump card in the person of Herbert II, Count of Maine, who since 1051 had languished under Geoffrey's domination. At some point, however, he had escaped to William's protection and supposedly made William his heir. As with the more famous similar incident with Edward the Confessor in England, the Duke's ally died before any solid hold could be had on Maine itself, in March of 1062. The pro-Angevin party within Le Mans itself rejected William's claim, electing Walter instead, providing William his casus belli. William's subsequent campaign into Maine was conclusive. The Duke harrying the land around Le Mans. The capital was a symbolic prize indeed, given it had been the crown jewel of Geoffrey's domination of the territory. William thus slowly ground down the city. As with his earlier siege on the border, he promised his rule would be good if they surrendered, but not so much otherwise. The city gave in without hard fighting, leaving only the intransigent stronghold of Mayenne, which the ducal forces eventually took by storm. Thus, by 1063, William, Duke of Normandy, was the undisputed prime power of the French kingdom. Having defeated his Angevin, French, and internal foes, Normandy's borders were secure, and though he would campaign briefly in Brittany during 1064, the formidable Duke of Normandy was poised to press his claim to an even greater prize across the sea. You can find out more about that in our Battle of Hastings 1066 video. If you stayed around this far, thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe to our channel as a sacrifice to the algorithm. You can also support us on Patreon and get ad-free early access to our videos for as little as $1. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.